Nearly derailed his career.
From the global resources of ABC News with Terry Moran, Martin Bashir, and Cynthia McFadden, this is Nightline, January 16, 2008.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to focus on a controversial and mysterious condition known as Morgellons. There are thousands who say they suffer from its bizarre symptoms, but there are many in the worlds of science and medicine who believe that it's all in the mind. Well, now the government has weighed in, acknowledging that people are suffering and accepting the need for proper scientific investigation. So the Centers for Disease Control today announced that it would begin a new in-depth study to try and explain this strange condition. My co-anchor Cynthia McFadden reports.
When we first met Ann Dell, she lived on Florida's Lake Mary in an idyllic setting. Her life was once idyllic too. Her family had caught the tail of the American dream. Her 3 daughters were good students, good athletes, and good kids.
It seems to be a pretty typical American family.
Yeah. Girls play softball. They're very good athletes. One catches, one pitches. Cheerleading competition, 4th in the nation.
But life now in the Dill household is far from perfect. Ann's 40-year-old husband, Tom, died 2 years ago in January, and she believes his death was due to a contagious illness that has infected her entire family.
Tell me what you believe is happening on your skin. It's like fibers that come out of your skin?
Yes, there's this fibrous material. It's in layers.
I look at your arm.
Our hands swell and they itch, and
it's been described as feeling as if either bugs are crawling on the surface of your skin or underneath your skin.
Underneath the skin has felt that way, especially like on the scalp.
That something's moving under there.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even like to say it because you know that there are people watching this who are going to think you're crazy.
I know, because right away that's what I know that they're going to say.
What would be your first guess if someone brought in something that looked like fibers?
They're fibers, I believe, from the environment, not from inside the skin.
Dr. Vincent DeLeo is chief of dermatology at New York's St. Luke's Roosevelt Medical Center. He has not examined Ann Dill.
I don't think this is any different than many patients I've seen who have excoriations and believe that there is something in their skin causing this.
So these open lesions would be a result of them scratching at their skin?
Yes, and then they begin to focus on those lesions and try to get them better, usually by picking out the fibers or the bugs or whatever it is.
Okay, let's see if there's some over there.
But for Mary Leitao, a scientist herself, opinions like Dr. DeLeo's don't add up. When her son Drew was just 2 years old, Mary noticed an odd sore on his lip that would not heal.
He very simply said bugs, and he pointed to his lips.
What Mary would do next would challenge the medical world and give hope to thousands of people across the country. As a biologist who once ran the electron microscope at Massachusetts General Hospital, she did what any scientist would do. She took a closer look.
What I saw were bundles of fibers, balls of fibers.
Even stranger, they glowed under UV light.
There was red and blue fluorescence in the fibers.
Armed with this research, Mary took Drew to a doctor at one of the country's leading hospitals, but he dismissed her tale of fibers and wrote to her pediatrician.
To basically say that my son needed Vaseline for his lips and that his mother, me, needed a thorough psychiatric evaluation.
Instead of a psych evaluation, Mary began poring through the medical literature, looking for clues. What she discovered was a 17th century reference to a strange disease with so-called harsh hairs called Morgellons. She named the strange fibers Morgellons disease and put the information on a website. Since then, more than 4,500 people have contacted Mary, claiming they too have Morgellons-type symptoms.
If you do a literature search in the medical literature, there is no Morgellons disease. The skin symptoms fit perfectly with the same group of individual symptoms that we saw in patients with delusions of parasitosis.
Delusions of parasitosis. In other words, it's all in their heads. And despite today's announcement, many doctors remain skeptical that this is a real medical condition at all.
They've pre-decided that these symptoms are too impossible to be real, so they've come to this conclusion that it's a delusion.
Randy Wymore is not a medical doctor, but he is a scientist at Oklahoma State University. He started out as a skeptic too, but years ago, after taking a closer look at the fibers, he changed his mind. And he says other doctors might also, if only they would look.
And the few that have seen patients often have never actually gotten down with either a handheld microscope or a dermatoscope and looked at the patient's skin to see these fibers.
On the day we filmed this, Wymore's colleague, Dr. Rhonda Casey, examined that chronic sore on Drew's lip, which, after 5 years, still had not healed.
Plain as day, definitely a fiber. There are fibers there, and I have never seen fibers in any other child's rash similar to this. Okay, come on in here, young ladies.
Ann Dill and her children also came to Oklahoma for an examination. They're all relieved to be among doctors who believe them.
To be doubted is very hard.
To have the disease and on top of it,
Yes.
have no one believe
That
you.
is real. Yeah.
Ann shows Dr. Casey a tiny pimple on her daughter Sarah's thigh that after 3 months has not gone away.
It's just a big wad of fibers bursting forth.
Having lost so many close friends because they're scared to come over. And I don't blame them being scared to come over because it's hard for me to go to school and not know if I'm contagious or not.
And when we come back, the search for answers. Back now to Cynthia McFadden's look at the strange and controversial condition known as Morgellons. Its sufferers complain of stinging and crawling sensations under the skin and say their bodies sometimes grow strange string-like fibers on the surface. Most doctors and scientists believe these symptoms are imagined, a form of delusion, but there are others who believe the physical impact is painfully real.
The doctors in Oklahoma believe Morgellons may trigger permanent neurological damage and may be spread by close contact. The slow decline of Ann Dill's husband, Tom, a powerfully built athlete, could be a case in point. He was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, but Ann says her husband had none of the lung problems typical of ALS sufferers.
He still had complete lung function, no oxygen, swallowed fine. No, I don't think he died from ALS.
Although Ann says she requested an autopsy, none was done. Tom's medical records were reviewed by Dr. Casey.
Many of the symptoms were similar to ALS, but I believe it was the neurologic decline of Morgellons disease.
Dr. Casey believes this rash is the real clue to Tom's death, though the doctors treating him never paid much attention to it.
Red, bright red, yeah, under his arms and on his hands, and his whole head itched and behind his ears.
Today, Ann worries that what happened to Tom is happening to her.
As you sit here right now, how do you feel?
My skin hurts, muscles hurt, to walk hurts.
Some of them have physical neurologic findings you can see, such as foot drop, palsy, but every one of them have differing degrees of neurologic decline.
One of these neurologic symptoms is brain fog, an inability to remember how to do simple tasks.
I would agree with your assessment. It is definitely not a human hair.
Dr. Wymore and his team are convinced that the fibers are at the center of the Morgellons mystery.
Whether bacterial, viral, parasites, insects, fungal, none of those really explain how those fibers and the specks are forming. And so it's very difficult to wrap one's mind around this because there is no example of anything that's quite like this.
But do these fibers grow from inside the body, as Morgellons patients believe, or do they come from the external environment, a kind of lint, as many doctors say? Whatever the cause, there is something strange about the fibers. Forensic scientist Ron Pogue at the Tulsa Police Crime Lab checked a Morgellons sample against the 100,000 known fibers in the FBI's national database.
No match at all. So this is some strange stuff.
Not cotton, not linen, not any known natural or synthetic fiber.
This isn't lint. This is not a commercial fiber. It's not.
Does that make you wonder whether, in fact, this might be a medical mystery?
I don't know what that means, to be honest. It's certainly a unique fiber.
It is a little mysterious, though.
Of course it is. It's a big jump from finding a fiber and producing a disease.
You certainly would agree that there's a lot of suffering going on.
Absolutely. No question about it. Your heart goes out to people like this.
Whole families who say they're suffering without knowing the cause or the cure, and until now have had little reason for hope.
We just lost our dad so unexpectedly, and we're scared we're going to lose our mom, too.
Their mother has been praying that medical help will come in time.
You okay? Look at pictures of us 4 years ago, and I don't even know who they are anymore. And my kids have to see not only their dad, but their mom disintegrating, and that's got to be really scary, too, I think.
Today's announcement is an important first step towards uncovering the haunting mystery of Morgellons.
Our thanks to Cynthia McFadden for that report. And when we come back, a young chef at the pinnacle of his profession faced with a challenge that threatened to derail his career, maybe even take his life.